I found it really important to really start with the foundations. We call it the foundations program because it's where you're building. It's where you're placing those building blocks to build off from.
We use the older children to help teach the younger children while I work with middles.
You think about it in the beginning of like, how am I going to balance all these different ages? And it really takes care of itself with how the program's set up.
So you've probably heard it all before. Are you really going to homeschool all of those kids all the way until they're graduated? But what about the fact that there's so many of them? What about the fact that there's such a huge age gap? You've got from teenagers down to toddlers, or maybe you have babies. Surely you're going to put the babies in preschool so that you can actually focus on the older ones. Surely you're going to put the older ones in high school so that the younger ones can get what they need, right? But you've been called to homeschool all of your kids all the way through high school. And that means you have this house full of kids of multiple ages. How can we do this well? Well, there are several things that we can do. One, many parents love setting up what's called sensory bins or busy boxes for their littles. These are just small plastic or wooden containers, and inside them you can keep several things. You can have one that's just filled with rice and a few cups. You can have one that's filled with beans. You can have one that's filled with kinetic sand, or one with Play-Doh or Lego, different things that your child can touch and feel and manipulate. And you don't have to have them all out at the same time. So as you are maybe working on math with your 7-year-old and you need to focus in because this is a very important concept that they need to get down. Well, you've got a 3-year-old who's needing to do something and it's kind of underfoot. You can just get out one of your sensory bins and say, hey, why don't you explore with this for just a little bit? And then I will be right with you while I work with sibling. The great thing about sensory bins is because they're playing, they are also learning, and they're great for getting to explore how things work. They're actually doing some physics lessons. They are doing some science lessons. They're doing some math. All of that is happening as they're exploring those boxes. Another thing that you can do is have a read aloud time with all of your children. And as you're reading the story all together, your toddlers may not get what your 8-year-olds get, right? Your babies will not be able to understand much of what you're saying, but they do know that you're speaking words. They do know that you're spending time together. They do know that a story is happening. And as they check in and out with it, they're getting better at being able to read. The great thing is because you're reading things that your older children are into and that they're interested in, those younger children get the benefit of hearing good quality literature at probably a younger age than their older sibling did. Another thing that some families do is just have the younger children around anyway. Embrace the chaos. It's gonna be loud. It's gonna be wild. There's gonna be a lot going on, and that's okay. Depending on who you are as a parent, in fact, you might thrive in that kind of environment. The juggling of the multiple things you might find helps your family really be able to focus and helps them be able to get what needs to be done. You might find that having things that can distract help you to not be distracted. Well, those are a few ideas that we have, but we actually went to a CC community and we asked some parents who are experienced, some parents with kids of multiple ages, and we asked them what they do and how they homeschool with kids of multiple ages around. Check out what they had to say.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm homeschool mom of 3. My oldest is in Challenge 1. I have one in Challenge B, and I also have a little who's in her last year of foundations. Well, she's just about to enter essentials next year. And that's kind of a big age gap, but it works really well because when the olders are younger, the idea is to kind of teach them to be able to do this themselves with help. And you're kind of gradually letting go of helping them through the day. So when they enter challenge, what we focused on most was, hey, let's set up your schedule. So we did it together and we had to schedule what they needed to do for the whole week. And then we went over it together and we like, you good? They're like, yeah, we're good. And then we have a time set up in the day where they could come ask us questions. But for the most part, they are self-sufficient in that time. And then that leaves us to be able to focus on the littles and do the memory work with them. And then we have that time set up. So when the older ones, if they do have questions, we allow that time there. So really, you think about it in the beginning of like, how am I going to balance all these different ages? And it really takes care of itself with how the program's set up.
All right, I have a 9, 8, 5, and 4-year-old. And so how I do it in my house, I usually will start with a common Bible time. And then after this, I will put some time with the little ones to feel that I feel basically if I answer their need and they feel loved and I spend quality time with them, they can go off and play without being so needy. And then I will work with my older ones. Once I give my older ones a break, this is when I can work again with my little ones with like some readings and book time and all this. And I also have a kind of a bin or educational games that I don't pull out that often. And so it feels like a new toy. And so in this way, they can go and play with it without causing a lot of distraction with the older ones.
Hi, my name's Rebecca, and I have been homeschooling for 17 years. About half of that has been with Classical Conversations, and we use the older children to help teach the younger children while I work with middles. So they help reinforce that classical model by remembering all the things that they have gone through. And all those things actually still even apply to their work as older students, especially with math, because math does take a lot of time. So it's very helpful for the older students to help teach the younger math, which takes a lot of load off of me as a parent, that I can really focus in on the younger kids. And the older ones, it tends to remind them where they came from, and they realize just how far that they've come in their homeschooling journey.
My children are 16, 14, 12, and 10. Prioritize what you're going to give your attention to, because there's one of you, and at least in my case, 4 of them. So I decide who I need to spend my time with during the day and kind of what I need to focus on with them. And I utilize my older kids to help younger kids with what they have already learned, to kind of take some of that burden off on me. The other thing is, if you're in community, the beauty is getting to do this with other families too. So we try to do study dates with other families, or even some of my kids will FaceTime each other and talk through, like, I'm having trouble with Latin, or what did you do for this during mock trial, or those kinds of things. So yeah, just prioritizing your time, utilizing your own children and other families in your community.
I have 5 kiddos. My youngest is 4, and then 7, 9, 11, and 13. And the tip that's been most helpful for me is to assign work with my older kiddos and my youngest kiddos. So I kind of assign them either like a project to do, or just unstructured free play, or have my older one read books with my little one, so that they all feel like they're being attended to and they're playing with each other.
I am a homeschooling mom. My oldest is in 9th grade and my youngest is in 2nd. My best advice for a homeschooling mom is to find your community. For my first 7 years of homeschooling, I did it alone, and it was really isolating. And so once we found TC, we found our community, and that's been a huge impact on our family.
We've been homeschooling about 10 years. My oldest is 14. I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So now that we entered the challenge years last year, I found it really important to really start with the foundations. We call it the foundations program because it's where you're building. It's where you're placing those building blocks to build off from. So we use those years, and then when we got to essentials, I use those three years in essentials to really teach my older one how to use a planner, giving her a little bit more freedom as she continued through those 3 tours of the program to build her independence, to really prepare her to launch her into Challenge well. So she's in Challenge B this year. She's very independent. I'm still there to check in with her stuff, but the younger ones require a lot more time. But I certainly don't want my 6-year-old not getting everything that I gave to my 14-year-old when she was 6. And so by the older ones, even the 11-year-old is now in her 3rd tour of essentials, getting ready for Challenge A next year. They are more independent, so I can still have the time needed for my 9-year-old and for my 6-year-old. So I think it's really important to take the time in those early years to work toward independence with them. Obviously, some of our children just tend to need a little bit more time than others. Some are more naturally independent and some just are not. So there's always a balance there, but definitely using those younger years and then using the 3 years of essentials to really prepare them well to launch them into Challenge, closer to independence. And also, one of the reasons for doing this is we want them to know how to learn so they continue learning for life. So if they can do it on their own by Challenge, they're set up well for life.
Well, I hope you were able to find something useful in all of that advice, and that you were able to find something that you can incorporate in your own home. Is there something we missed? Let us know in the comments so that we can all share these great ideas and become better everyday educators together.